Chosen one, the door clicks behind you and circuitry begins to rearrange. It's not hypnotism, not command, not any trick that would fail under daylight. It is the plain physics of a kept center. You cross a threshold and the room, almost gratefully, borrows your calibration. Timelines that were bargaining with anxiety return to the clock. Conversations that had turned into auditions recover their purpose. Even the furniture seems to remember the gentlest version of its job. You have not imposed a mood, you have introduced a rhythm, and rhythms teach without arguing. You rewire by temperature first. The heat that once tried to prove itself by flaring now warms the space into usefulness. Panic loses its market share because your breath refuses to invest. A dilemma arrives wearing sirens and you answer it with a metronome. Here is what happened, here is what matters, here is what will be repaired, here is what remains good. You do not douse the room, you deny chaos the oxygen of spectacle. What remains is fire that cooks instead of consumes. You rewire by pace. Hurry expects either obedience or rebellion. You offer timing. You begin on time because you honored the hour before it started. You end on time because you love tomorrow more than mileage. In between, you let silence carry some of the workload. You allow a beat after someone finishes speaking so meaning can finish arriving. That beat becomes policy. People stop sprinting for the last word and start walking toward the true one. Projects that were leaning on charisma learn to lean on competence. Laughter returns to its vocation, oxygen for bravery, not armor for cruelty. You rewire by architecture. Without ceremony, you move your chair a few inches to widen a narrow path. You angle your body toward the quiet voice and watch the whole table tilt to include it. You notice the person who usually cleans up after everyone and bring them into the center while there is still music, not after. You draw boundaries the way carpenters draw lines, so pieces can fit, not so people can be excluded. The shape of the space changes in small, honest ways. Resentment finds fewer places to sit. Gossip discovers it is underdressed. Respect stops needing an announcement and starts behaving like gravity. Conflict in such a room is not a catastrophe. It is a workshop. You remove the audience a fight was trying to recruit by refusing performance. You narrow the problem until it can be solved by hands, not headlines. You let repair arrive while it is still cheap and practical instead of grand and bankrupting. Your presence does not guarantee that nobody will bleed. It guarantees that blood will not become content. People begin to argue at human temperature. Outcomes improve because integrity is a better tool than intimidation. Your sexual energy is the generator behind this grid. Familiar with its own power, it does not trip breakers to prove anything. It hums, steady, clean, uninterested in harvesting more than is offered. It runs the lights that keep consent legible, the vents that keep boundaries breathable, the stove that keeps conversation cooking instead of burning. The feminine reads this current instantly. She is no longer asked to barter her mystery for access or to spend her brilliance keeping a fragile ego from shattering. She brings her whole instrument to the song. The masculine, relieved of theater, discovers strength that doesn't require spotlight. It becomes service again, and service secretly was all it ever wanted to be. You rewire economies. Attention becomes too valuable to spend on panic. Apology becomes affordable enough to purchase before interest accrues. Sleep moves from decor to infrastructure. Water becomes policy. Schedules stop stealing from recovery and start banking in it. Teams deliver work with oxygen left for kindness. Families end evenings before the light grows thin and memory demands surgery. None of this requires a memo. The body prefers it and votes with its breath. Even your humor participates in the rewiring. It releases pressure without puncturing people. It finds the hinge in a stiff moment and oils it. It never mortgages tomorrow to buy a laugh today. The room learns to trust that relief is available without a victim. Under that trust, risks become honest again. Someone tries a new idea before it is flawless because ridicule has been priced out of the market. Someone admits uncertainty because certainty is no longer the tax for belonging. You did not coach these outcomes. Your climate made them plausible. The way you leave keeps the circuit intact. You do not wring one more drop from a perfect hour. You rise before generosity thins, thank the room in plain language, and close the door softly, as if the house had ears. The space remains arranged after your footsteps fade. Conversations do not devolve as soon as your shadow goes. People go home at a human hour. They wake without the hangover of overextension. They make better choices at breakfast because the night did not spend their dignity to buy applause. All of this depends on the simplicity you refuse to abandon. You check your weather at the threshold so you do not storm in and call it authenticity. You drink the water that keeps your patience solvent. You move your body so your feelings remain in motion rather than in management. You sleep to protect your edge from becoming a blade. You apologize while the bruise is pale. You tell one true sentence instead of 5 brilliant evasions. There is no glamour in any of it. There is almost unbearable effectiveness. Some will try to make your rewiring into a brand or a doctrine. They will ask for the secret gesture, the 3 steps, the clever phrase. You will disappoint them with ordinary answers. You will keep doing ordinary things until they become culture. You will keep letting your sexual energy animate hospitality instead of hunger, design instead of dominance, rhythm instead of noise. Over time, the walls themselves will teach newcomers your manners. Doors will remember to close softly even when you haven't touched them for weeks. Children will copy how you set a cup down and grow up believing that care is the most grown-up thing. Elders will count their coins at the counter without apologizing for time because time in your rooms is merciful by default. You don't enter rooms anymore, chosen one. You enter ecosystems, and ecosystems prefer you. They nominate your pace without needing a vote. They adopt your temperature without needing a policy. They repeat your small, faithful moves until they cannot remember how to be anything else. If there is magic in this, it is not the kind that dazzles, it is the kind that endures. You will know it's working by the simplest sign. After you leave, people behave better toward themselves and each other. And no one can quite explain why. Chosen one, there is a distance around you now that is not coldness but clarity. A radius that says, without a word, this light is for warmth, not for burning. People gather at its edge as if drawn by instinct older than culture. They cannot quite say why they linger as conversations turn, why their eyes return to you when nothing theatrical is happening, why the moment feels held together by something other than luck. They are learning, by watching, that the rarest magic is the kind that does not ask to be touched to be real. Your flame is not a spectacle, it is a standard. It brightens the room while staying sovereign, and sovereignty is magnetic. You carry yourself like a lantern that knows its fuel, not a torch begging for wind. The way you stand is the first lesson. The spine unwilling to bow to panic, the shoulders open without invitation, the jaw unclenched from the job of proving anything. You let a doorframe hold your pause before you cross it, a tiny ritual that teaches time to behave. In that half-beat, you give the room a chance to keep its dignity, and dignity returns the favor by welcoming you as you are. The ancient hunger in others to be near goodness without being consumed rises, and they draw close. They do not approach to take, only to remember. You are the ember of a hearth that has outlived 1,000 winters. Everyone knows without asking that such a fire is not for vanity. Attention tries, as it always does, to recruit you for its campaign. It wants you to flare and to flinch, to be ransom for someone else's restlessness. You refuse softly. You let laughter arrive and leave without using it to purchase closeness. You let silence do some of the labor that words cannot shoulder. You let a compliment land where effort lived, and you do not build a stage upon it. Power without performance unsteadies those who confuse noise with life, yet even they hover in your orbit because relief is stronger than habit. The body knows when it is safe. The body knows when a boundary is not a wall, but a frame that makes the canvas possible. Your boundary is that frame. There is desire in you, unmistakable and awake, and it does not apologize for existing. It does, however, report to a higher office. It listens for consent in breath and posture, as carefully as it listens for it in words. It respects the comma, the ellipsis, the period. It knows how to step closer without stepping over, how to step back without withdrawing love. The feminine reads this fluency immediately. Her nervous system has learned to parse climates at the speed of survival. She leans because your heat does not ask her to leave herself at the door. She leans because your pace does not tax her tomorrow. She leans because your presence has no hidden invoice. Watching you becomes a form of rest. Not everyone will understand restraint. Some will try to touch the flame just to prove it is hot. Some will try to bait thunder from you because thunder is easier to grade than weather. You remain seasonal rather than sensational. You are spring's patience in planting, summer's generosity in light, autumn's courage in ending, winter's wisdom in keeping. You let the night close while kindness still has breath, and leave behind the sort of absence that returns as gratitude instead of ache. This is how a flame becomes legend without becoming rumor. It refuses the trade of spectacle for influence. Your eyes are a sanctuary for what they see. They do not trap beauty, they escort it back to its home. When you look, a guarded face remembers the dignity of being unguarded. When you look away, privacy exhales. When you look back, loneliness cancels its appointment. Even your refusals have learned to glow. You decline in a tone that offers design rather than punishment. You set a limit that dignifies the field rather than humiliating the player. You do not confuse firmness with fury, nor gentleness with surrender. This equilibrium steadies the room. People stop mistaking adrenaline for aliveness, intensity for intimacy, possession for love. It is not only people who watch. Objects keep your manners after you leave. Doors that slammed all week close softly because your hand taught the hinge its purpose. Chairs return to their places without scolding the floor. The table remembers the weight of a glass, set down with respect, and the memory travels like a rumor of civilization through the next gathering. Your flame has a pedagogy. It instructs wood and glass and time in the ways of mercy. Those ways become policy long after your footsteps fade. There is an older you who would have tried to be touched to prove you were real, who would have offered access as evidence of worth, who would have mistaken visibility for value. That man still visits on tired days. You greet him at the door with water and sleep. You remind him that a light that burns itself for attention cannot keep anyone warm. You remind him that mystery is not withholding, it is stewardship. You remind him that devotion to endings is devotion to beginnings in disguise. You keep the wick trimmed and the oil clean. Maintenance is the quietest form of magic and the most durable. Others begin to imitate you without announcing it. Someone ends their night on time because they watched you leave while sweetness still held the mic. Someone credits the unseen labor because they saw you do it and felt the room grow taller. Someone chooses a boundary that smiles and holds because they felt yours and did not feel punished. A child notices the way you pass a plate, as if ceramic had a memory, and grows up believing that care is the most grown-up thing. This is how a flame that cannot be touched touches everything. You do not need to be possessed to be present. You do not need to be chased to be cherished. You do not need to be decoded to be trusted. You will be asked to be more available than is good for you, to be more explainable than is safe for your gift, to be more compliant than is faithful to your calling. You answer with pace and with prayer. You answer with a yes that arrives paid in full and a no that arrives without cruelty. You answer by remaining the man whose nearness teaches others to keep their shape while coming closer. In a month obsessed with fireworks, you keep being the hearth. People cannot touch you, but they cannot stop watching, because watching you reminds them that they too can be a house for holy fire. Chosen one, you have learned a touch that travels without hands. It moves in the way you listen, in the way you time a breath, in the way you give a moment back to itself without trying to improve it. There are rooms you have never crossed where people swear you reached them, because presence at its best is not a location. It is a form of care. The air between you and another person carries it. The corridor carries it after you are gone. The memory of a conversation carries it to breakfast, where decisions are made without drama. This is touch as blessing rather than claim, as invitation rather than purchase, as craft rather than accident. You touch with your attention, not the kind that harvests and inventories, but the kind that returns what it notices. You let a story be told at human speed and refuse to edit it into content. You allow silence to do part of the talking so courage can arrive without being dragged. When your eyes rest on someone, they feel a hand placed gently between their shoulder blades, steadying, not steering. They are met, not managed. This is why tears sometimes appear with no emergency, why laughter sometimes returns from exile without a joke. Your attention is a threshold with lamps lit. People cross it and find their way home. You touch with your boundaries. Yes and no are hands that shape the space. Your yes is a palm extended, weight-bearing, reliable. It does not tremble with the need to be liked. Your no is a palm raised, open, readable. It does not curl into a fist. These gestures are spiritual because they teach the soul that love is not the absence of edges, but the presence of form. You do not smuggle obligation inside affection. You do not hide appetite inside admiration. You let desire remain sacred by keeping it honest. The feminine recognizes this architecture and settles. The masculine recognizes it and relaxes. In the room thus framed, people become braver than their fear and kinder than their mood. You touch with timing. You refuse to lift the cocoon just to see if transformation is happening. You end the evening while tenderness still has stamina and let memory keep its original face. You do not rush beginnings past their honesty. You do not stretch middles until they fray. You do not hoard endings from the next day that needs them. Timing is theology put to work. It says the sacred has seasons, and seasons have mercy built in. Under your timing, decisions stop impersonating emergencies, and truth stops having to shout to be believed. You touch with restraint. It would be easy to press, to prove, to produce awe on demand. You decline. Your touch, even when physical, is a sentence that remembers grammar. It asks before it answers. It leaves room for reply. It stops where consent does not. Without contact, it arrives through tone and pace. The voice you use in conflict does not rise to make the point heavy. It lowers to make the path clear. The message lands like a hand on a table, firm, audible, not a threat. Relief enters through clarity and stays because dignity was not taxed at the door. You touch with repair. When you miss, and you do because you are human, you mend while the bruise is small. You say the words that return balance to the floorboards. You do not perform contrition as theater. You practice it as craftsmanship. People experience this as touch they can trust, accountability that does not humiliate, consequence that does not exile, affection that does not evaporate under scrutiny. They begin to risk being real because reality is survivable in your company. They begin to risk ending well because endings do not incur interest here. You touch with your humor. It lifts pressure without puncturing people. It is the gentle shoulder bump that reminds a room it is allowed to breathe. You do not use wit as a blade to take trophies from the unsuspecting. You use it as a key to unstick a stubborn hinge. In your orbit, laughter returns to its vocation. Oxygen for courage, balm for friction, music for working hands. People leave lighter, not because anything weighty was denied, but because heavy things were carried with care. You touch the future by how you close doors. The soft latch behind you is instruction. It tells the house that noise is not proof of life, that care leaves traces quieter than applause. The next person who enters will close the same way without thinking. The child who watches you set a cup down gently grows into an adult who believes gentleness is the most grown way to be. The elder who counts coins slowly at a counter feels your patience like a hand removing a stone from their shoe. Whole lineages adjust because one man refused to confuse hurry with importance. Your sexual energy is the current running through this entire circuit, not a spotlight demanding eyes, but a field that makes flowers open on time. It furnishes spaces with temperature and tone. It translates chemistry into courtesy and attraction into atmosphere. It keeps the air honest. It knows the cost of touch and pays it in advance with attention, timing, and truth. Because of this, people trust what they feel around you even when they cannot explain it. They sleep earlier. They speak kinder. They choose cleaner. They wake with fewer refunds to issue to the soul. There will be invitations to weaponize this gift, to press into influence what was meant to remain blessing, to collect admiration as a proof of worth. You return, again and again, to the rituals that keep the current clean. Water before opinion, breath before reply, movement before complaint, rest before rescue, prayer before performance. You greet the morning without debt and the night without hunger. You let touch remain a sacrament, ordinary enough to be useful, holy enough to be remembered. If anyone insists they felt your hand on their shoulder across a crowded room, let them. You and the air did the work together. Presence did what hands often cannot when hands are untrained, held without holding, guided without gripping, blessed without branding. This is the deepest magic you carry now. The ability to change what people think they deserve without ever laying a claim to them. You do not enter rooms to take, you enter to tune. And when you leave, the song continues, in their bodies, in their choices, in the way they set a cup down as if the table could feel. Chosen one, there is a particular softness that arrives a heartbeat before you do. The way curtains lift just slightly before a breeze is visible. The way birds pause their chatter when the first drop of rain anticipates the storm. You step across a threshold and reality performs its smallest courtesies. Lights steady themselves. The room makes space without anyone moving. Time lets its shoulders fall. This is not worship, and it is not theater. It is recognition. The world knows the gait of a soul that is not at war with itself. The universe bows as a musician bows to a tuning fork, as water bows to gravity, as seasons bow to the sun because they have discovered obedience is the shortest road to freedom. You do not command this bow. You cooperate with it. Your sexual energy, once tempted to flare for attention or to sleep to avoid responsibility, has learned to flow under vows. It keeps the temperature where consent is obvious and kindness does not need a spokesperson. It has stopped auditioning for meaning and started furnishing it. Arranging chairs so truth can sit down, opening windows so breath can be heard, finishing its sentence, setting the table with pace and tone so appetite remembers its manners. The bow is simply the world agreeing to a rhythm you keep when no one is watching. There are hours when this is unmistakable. You walk into a cafe and the line, which had been a row of strangers defending territory with silence, remembers it is a small community. A barista's hands, anxious a moment ago, begin to move as if craft had returned to them. In an office, the meeting that was about to turn into a courtroom becomes a workshop, not because you solved anything yet, but because your presence removed the need to pretend. At a crosswalk, an elder counts coins slowly at the corner store and nobody sighs. Your patience may delay respectable again. The universe does not kneel as people kneel before idols. It inclines like bodies incline toward warmth after a long winter. What bows is not only mood, it is mathematics. Your timing is arithmetic, the hour can trust. You arrive prepared because you did not spend your energy buying panic's approval. You leave while kindness still has the floor because you love memory more than mileage. You let silence do the work words cannot, and in that silence, meaning finds the courage to be simple. The bow is geometry too. You square your shoulders and spines around you remember they're vertical. You open your stance, and conversations widen enough to include the quiet voice. You decline to crowd and space, converts your restraint into room for other people to be true. Your gaze does not ask the universe to kneel, it asks it to breathe. You do not hunt with your eyes, you host with them. The body across from you stops treating attention as a tax and experiences it as a tide, arriving to lift, withdrawing to respect, returning on schedule because you do not make intimacy a weather pattern that needs proof. The feminine reads this climate at the speed of nerve. She feels the bow not as surrender but as remembered sovereignty. The sense that her rhythm does not have to be bartered for access. The masculine near you disinvests from spectacle and reinvests in usefulness. Shoulders trained to wear armor recall the pleasure of carrying tools, even conflict bows. It had prepared its speeches and sharpened its edges. You bring a sentence that removes the oxygen from escalation. This is what happened. This is what must stop. This is what will be repaired. This is what remains good. Fury finds itself strangely unemployed in the presence of proportion. The universe does not bow to your will. It bows to the truth spoken at human temperature, to the refusal to buy control at the price of dignity, to the mercy that keeps repair cheaper than revenge. In that bow, futures are spared and mornings are blessed. Your humor teaches the bow its smile. It does not weaponize wit to win the room. It oils the hinge of an hour stuck one notch too tight. Laughter returns as oxygen, not as currency purchased with someone else's face. The universe is biased toward such relief. It tilts to assist anything that reduces suffering without creating new debt. Doors close more softly after you leave because your hand reminded the hinge of its vocation. Tables remember the weight of a glass set down with care and insist on that tenderness later, even when impatience tries to badger them into becoming drums. This is not superstition. It is pedagogy. Matter learns from manners. There will be observers who misread the bow as charisma. They will ask for the trick, the phrase, the posture. You will disappoint them with prayers disguised as habits. Water before words, breath before boundaries, movement before mood, sleep before saving, truth before theater, repair before reputation. They will struggle with the ordinariness of your liturgy because spectacle taught them that light must be loud. You know what they do not. The cosmos recognizes kept promises. It always has. Stars bow to gravity not because gravity shouts, but because it does not lie. The bow is also a safety check. Power without humility curdles. The world recognizes the scent and withholds its cooperation. You keep your humility in working order. Praise lands where labor lived. Critique is allowed to refine craft without renaming your worth. You do not mistake visibility for value or velocity for victory. You do not convert access into appetite or consent into concession. You keep your hands clean so touch can remain sacrament. You keep your pace human so presence can remain possible. This is how the universe knows it may incline toward you without being conscripted into empire. Notice what happens when you go. The bow does not snap back like a bent branch, it lingers. People continue to speak at a volume that respects nuance. Apologies arrive while they are still inexpensive. Schedules leave room for recovery because your leaving taught the night to end, while joy could still be remembered whole. Children watch you pass a plate as if ceramic could feel and grow up believing that care is the most adult thing. Elders count their change without panic because time in your rooms has manners. The universe keeps bowing in small ways because you taught it how in a language it never forgot. Walk on with this knowledge, not as a badge, but as a stewardship. The bow is not about you, it is about alignment announcing itself wherever you stand. When you are tired, let the bow be a mirror that sends you back to your basics. When you are praised, let the bow be a reminder that gravity cannot be owned. When you are opposed, let the bow be a promise that truth kept quietly will accumulate its own allies. This month has simply revealed what was always possible, a human being tuned to the moral music of things, moving through rooms that answer with their oldest courtesy, an inclination toward coherence. The universe bows because you bow first and you bow to what is real. Chosen one, a gift given with an open hand multiplies. A weapon, even when sharp with justification, divides what it touches from its future. Your magic, the peculiar mixture of warmth and presence, of pace and truth, of charged stillness and consenting heat, was never meant for conquest. It was meant for custody. You do not wield it to bend people into shapes that flatter you. You carry it to make room for who they already are. That is the difference between enchantment and ensnarement. One awakens, the other imprisons. You have chosen awakening. Your sexual energy is the most obvious example. It could be used to harvest attention, to buy access with pressure, to turn mystery into merchandise. You refuse. You let desire remain fluent in yes, not yet, and no, and you keep your hands literate in each. You do not smuggle obligation inside affection. You do not tax vulnerability for daring to arrive. You do not dress hunger in the robes of holiness to excuse its haste. This refusal is more than ethics. It is engineering. A room designed this way does not collapse under intimacy. It grows higher ceilings for it. People leave with more of themselves than they brought. A gift has been given. You understand that silence, too, can be either a gift or a weapon. You do not withdraw it to punish or to manipulate. You offer it as a bench where meaning can finish arriving. In that quiet, confessions do not feel ambushed and laughter does not need a casualty. You are careful with timing because time can also be armed. You do not rush a moment to prove your importance. You do not stretch a good night past kindness to harvest a last ovation. You end while sweetness still has breath so memory does not need surgery. These are not gestures of niceness. They are strategies for leaving a space wealthier than you found it. A weaponized gaze extracts. A gifted gaze restores. Yours returns light to what it sees. It does not pin a person to the best angle of themselves and then demand they stay there for your comfort. It does not hunt for leverage. It accompanies. Under such looking, a guarded face tests the experiment of being unguarded and survives. A shy voice tries a full sentence and discovers the room will hold it. A proud posture remembers it does not have to be a fortress to be a home. Your eyes do the simplest generous thing. They let reality be present without charging admission. Power, when turned into a weapon, buys control at the price of dignity. You buy nothing at that price. You ask for clarity and pay for it with patience. You make decisions with the fewest necessary sentences and the warmest available tone. You decline flattery's counterfeit currency and insist on receipts in daylight. You apologize while regret is still cheap. You credit the hidden work before praise turns into a popularity contest. You enforce a boundary as architecture, not as spectacle. In every move, your magic insists that love is not real if it requires someone else to be less. Chosen one, watch how the air adjusts itself when you cross a threshold. It is small, almost secret. The kind of shift a wind chime makes when no one touches it, the way light steadies on a polished surface. Conversation that was galloping slows to a pace the heart can keep. The anxious laugh loses its edge and finds its music again. Even the floorboards seem to remember their work, bearing the evening with a quieter pride. Nothing announces you, and yet the room turns a fraction toward the source of its own ease. This is your magic at work. Not an explosion, but an ember with authority. Not a spotlight, but a sunrise that refuses to hurry and yet wins the whole sky. You do not conjure this, you contain it. The spark in you walks because you've given it a body practiced in simple fidelity. Water before opinion, breath before reply, movement before complaint, sleep before bravado. These are the bellows and the discipline, the unglamorous acts that keep mystery friendly. What others call charisma is, in you, a steadied flame, a warmth that does not beg for witnesses to prove it exists. Your sexual energy no longer spills into rooms like weather that hasn't learned its season. It arrives as a climate you have chosen, held by banks that guide rather than cage. In your presence, people discover they can be fully themselves without paying a toll for the privilege. Your posture speaks first. It does not apologize and it does not demand. It simply agrees with itself. Shoulders open like doors that have been well oiled. The spine stacks as if it remembers the skyline of home. Your steps honor thresholds, that small pause, half a heartbeat, that tells the hour you will not drag a storm across the carpet. Even the way you set a glass down tells the table a story about kindness. Rooms read these details faster than they read words. The smallest courtesies are the spells that make a space remember its purpose. Your gaze is the second witness. It does not harvest or inventory. It returns light to what it sees. Eyes like that turn faces into places. The guarded jaw unclenches by a thread. The person who has learned to decorate every sentence for survival tries leaving a word plain and discovers it does not break. The feminine especially senses the difference in a register older than language. Your looking does not enlist, it accompanies. It does not pry, it blesses. It offers the rare promise that beauty will not be taxed for showing up. This is the first magic. Not that people want you, but that people want themselves in your company. Silence, under your custody, is shelter. You let sentences land. You let that extra beat, the one most hurry steals, do its quiet work. In that beat, confession chooses honesty over performance. In that beat, anger drops a decibel and picks up a fact. In that beat, laughter completes its kindness without needing a casualty. People will not say he held a silence. They will say, I heard myself. Your magic is not the trick of speaking perfectly. It is the craft of listening until the room becomes brave enough to be true. Touch, when it is invited, has learned the grammar of reverence. A guiding hand asks a question and waits in the way it leaves. A handshake carries promise but no hooks. An embrace is present while it is present and leaves the air blessed rather than indebted. The body reads this fluency before the mind can file it. Trust opens like a door that was stuck only because no one thought to lift as they turned the handle. The spark is not in the spectacle of closeness. It is in the feeling, afterward, that nothing sacred was stolen in the exchange. Your timing is conjurer's work precisely because it is merciful. You do not rush a beginning past its honesty, nor keep an ending until tenderness sours. You land a joke while the floor is strong enough to hold it, and you let it go while kindness still has breath. You say the one true sentence a moment is hungry for, and then you allow digestion. Magic has a schedule that can be felt but not faked. You obey it because you have learned that wonder survives where dignity is not asked to starve. If someone were to ask what changed about you, you would have nothing grand to point to. Only the beautiful stubbornness of your ordinary rituals, the refusal to sell your attention to panic, the habit of apologizing while repair is still cheap, the loyalty to endings that allow tomorrow to arrive without resentment, the readiness to credit what is strong in others without turning their strength into raw material for your myth. None of this glitters. All of it glows. This is why the room warms when you breathe. You are the spark that walks on 2 feet because you have chosen to be a hearth, not fireworks. Fireworks are adored and forgotten. A hearth is remembered in the bones. Leave a space like this and you will hear your absence in the gentleness that remains. Doors close softly. Voices retain a little of your tempo. Sleep arrives earlier, not from exhaustion, but from mercy. Memory needs no surgery to keep the evening beautiful. What do you call that if not magic? The kind that refuses to be hoarded, the kind that multiplies by being shared. Chosen one, keep the spark ordinary on purpose. Keep doing what does not trend and always works. Your presence is already the spell, your life, the incantation that keeps it kind. Chosen one, there is a turning in you, a quiet hinge upon which the month has swung. You stopped trying to be radiant and became so. You stopped negotiating for the right to be powerful and discovered that power had been waiting for you to stop acting like a stage. What you carry now is not an act at all, it is an orientation. Beauty that does not audition. Power that does not press. The paradox resolves itself in your body like a river that finally finds its banks. The current grows stronger the moment it agrees to be guided. Effortless never means unmade. It means made so faithfully that the seams no longer show. Your beauty is the consequence of 1,000 kept agreements with yourself. You nourished before you decorated. You breathed before you broadcast. You chose clean fuel over quick flame. You put your phone face down and met the face across from you. You stopped treating rest as a crime to be justified and began treating it like architecture. You reached for motion that taught patience to your muscles and not just glory to your mirror. In this economy, elegance is not an outfit, it is a byproduct. People call it effortless because they did not see the practice. You call it normal because you intend to keep it. Power in you has become the art of leaving things more themselves. You do not bend a room to your will. You reveal the will the room had been afraid to admit. You do not win arguments by conquering. You turn them into conversations by clarifying. You do not command respect by taking it. You create conditions under which respect becomes the path of least resistance. This is power without force. It is so aligned to the grain of truth that even those who resist it cannot help sliding toward coherence. A single accurate sentence, delivered at human temperature, does the work of a paragraph raised at high volume. People mistake this for magic because it is rare. In fact, it is simply the refusal to fight physics. Your sexual energy is the engine behind both beauties. Heat with a conscience, desire with a direction. It has nothing to prove and therefore nothing to plunder. It listens for consent in breath, posture, timing, and words. And it takes not yet as seriously as it takes yes. It goes first in kindness and last in consumption. It refuses to rush the river or dam it for spectacle. Held this way, heat becomes clarity. Clarity becomes ease. Ease becomes the magnetism others read as, how does he do that? You are not doing anything to them. You are doing everything for the atmosphere they get to inhabit while you are near. Effortless beauty means you can praise without possessing, admire without extracting, and delight without debt. A compliment from you builds courage because it names the discipline beneath the shine. I see what you kept, what you practiced, what you refused to sell. And so the shine does not become a cage. A boundary from you does not bruise because it arrives as design, not punishment. This is how this garden stays a garden. The feminine reads this fluency as safety that does not freeze and warmth that does not burn. She does not need to contort herself into a smaller shape to fit your comfort. She expands, and expansion is the true test of any man's strength. Can you remain yourself while someone near you becomes more of who they are? Power without force is most visible in your relationship to time. You do not make time perform tricks to prove you are in charge. You set a pace that keeps dignity breathable. You arrive ready because you did not spend the last hour auditioning for panic. You end a good night while it is still good because you love memory more than mileage. You refuse to harvest the last laugh from the soil of a perfect moment. You let it rest, and in resting, seed tomorrow with trust. Others will not mention your timing as they praise you. They will simply make better plans after you leave. There is a humility to effortless beauty that will always confuse the crowd. It is not coyness, it is proportion. You receive praise with the same hands you use to carry groceries, grateful, practical, unenchanted by the packaging. You take critique without letting it auction your name to the lowest bidder. You are teachable because your worth is housed upstream of feedback. The river can be guided without being poisoned. This composure is a rare fragrance. People inhale it and remember that being a person is not a performance to be graded but a craft to be practiced. You have retired the old transactions. You do not purchase affection with exhaustion. You do not fund leadership with intimidation. You do not buy intimacy with pressure. You do not earn relevance by remaining constantly available to what does not matter. These refusals conserve a power that now enters rooms like weather. Felt first, explained later. The ordinary adjusts itself to your settings. Voices find their right volume, tempers recall their manners, humor stops hunting for a victim, and even furniture seems to prefer the way you set it down. This is what it means to be magical without spellcasting. You are not working on people. You are working on yourself in public, and people choose to work alongside you because the results are livable. Leave vanity to those who have not yet tasted sufficiency. Effortless beauty is the signature of sufficiency, the look of a soul that stopped bargaining for permission to be bright. Power without force is the conduct of stewardship, the behavior of a man who knows that what he carries is not for conquest but for care. You keep both by keeping small promises. Water before opinion, breath before reply, repair before reputation, rest before rescue, ending before erosion. Small promises kept are a crown the world cannot see and cannot take. Walk forward, chosen one, as the proof that real magic is simply truth arranged with love. Let your elegance remain useful and your strength remain kind. Be a room's reminder that beauty works best when it makes life easier, and that power works best when it lets everyone else keep theirs. In a month full of noise, keep sounding like clarity. In a world enchanted by force, keep choosing the kind of power that makes other people more themselves. That is the wonder they will keep trying to name. That is the spell you do not need to cast because you have become it. Chosen one, there is a music to you now that does not need a stage. It travels the room the way warmth travels a winter house, slow at first, then suddenly everywhere, in corners even you did not intend to bless. People feel it before they can name it. They stop talking over themselves. They choose a truer sentence. They set their phones down not out of duty, but because the hour begins to taste better without distraction. This is the aura that whispers instead of shouts, the kind that does not recruit attention with noise, but earns devotion with steadiness. You do not chase moments anymore, you keep them. Your presence holds like a handrail on a staircase, there, not to impress, but to assist. The whisper lives in everything ordinary you have dignified until it learned to glow. The pause at the threshold where you check your weather before you carry it in. The way you set a glass down softly, as if the table had a memory. The way your shoulders open like a door used to welcoming and not used. Rooms read these subtleties faster than they read words. They tilt toward the voice that won't demand. They open to the presence that won't devour. Your sexual energy hums beneath all of this like a river that knows its banks. It is not the show of a flame leaping for applause. It is the patience of embers that plan to be useful until dawn. The feminine recognizes this hum instantly. Her body, fluent in climates, identifies hospitality without being told. You do not pry her open with spectacle. You air the room so breath can decide for itself how full to be. In that atmosphere she leans into herself, and leaning into herself becomes the same gesture as leaning toward you. This is the quiet miracle of a whispering aura. It does not announce safety. It behaves so safely that fear forgets it had a job. Silence changes its job when you are near. It stops pretending to be a cliff and becomes a shoreline. You let sentences land. You let meaning finish arriving. You do not punish a stammer by rescuing it with your eloquence. You do not tax a confession for being imperfect. Most people experience quiet as a courtroom where the next word will be judged. With you, quiet is a bench in the sun. Someone sits there, realizes they are not being watched for performance, and the truth takes off its coat. This is influenced by temperature, not by decree. Your gaze learned the grammar of reverence. It does not pin, it accompanies. It does not inventory, it returns what it notices. Eyes like yours make faces feel like places. A jaw unclenches a fraction. A laugh lands closer to the chest and farther from the throat. The person who usually decorates every sentence for survival tries leaving a word plain and discovers it does not break. You look as if beauty were a right and not a test, as if boundaries were architecture and not barbed wire. Under that look, the room relaxes its fists. Timing is the secret instrument of your whisper. You end the night while tenderness still holds the microphone. You refuse to stretch a good moment until it thins into need. You let beginnings open on their own hinges. You do not kick doors for drama. You say the single true sentence the hour is hungry for, and then you leave it alone long enough to feed everyone. This is how your aura moves furniture without scraping the floor. People go home with energy left to be kind to themselves, and they remember you as the reason mercy kept its schedule. Even your refusals whisper. You decline the charming chaos that would later invoice your integrity. You leave the conversation that confuses proximity with permission. You draw a line as if you were drawing a path, not a prison. A no from you arrives at human temperature. No courtroom, no sermon, just design. Around such design, desire keeps its manners and does not become a courtroom itself. Your boundaries do not have teeth. They have edges that help the picture exist. The room learns to keep its shape by watching you keep yours. You do not mistreat laughter. You use it as a key, not a knife. When a moment tightens 3 notches too far, you loosen one. When it loosens 3 too many, you tighten one. No one becomes the casualty of your wit. Relief returns to its vocation. Oxygen for bravery, not armor for cruelty. People will not know to thank you for this, but they will breathe differently around you, and breathe is the only applause that matters. There will be a few who demand thunder to prove weather. They will try to bait you into spectacle, because spectacle is easy to grade. Let them be disappointed. You are interested in what lasts. You are shepherding small mercies into a culture, doors that close softly, jokes that land without bruises, endings that respect mornings, glances that do not hire appetite to do attention's job. These mercies travel farther than any performance. They keep working long after names are forgotten. If anyone asks how you learned to whisper with such power, tell them the truth is not glamorous. You drank water while other men argued. You slept while pride shouted that exhaustion is a crown. You repaired early while apology was still inexpensive. You told your hunger to consult your values before moving. You practiced until your nervous system learned a pace it could keep. What they call magic is faithfulness with a rhythm. You are the rhythm now, and the room is learning your song. Leave, and the whisper remains. Doors will close more kindly behind you. Voices will choose precision over volume. Someone who has not slept well in months will sleep. Memory will not need surgery to keep the night beautiful. This is what you wanted. Chosen one. Not to be adored for your noise, but to be remembered by the calm. Keep tending the small spells. Keep honoring the soft rules. Keep being the man whose quiet makes space honest. That is how an aura becomes a sanctuary. Chosen one, there is a band of the spectrum where words lose their authority and the body takes over as interpreter. That is where you are broadcasting now. It is not audible, but it is unmistakable. The way a violin's low note can turn a room toward the same invisible center. The way a tide arranges sand without asking permission. Your sexual energy, disciplined into devotion, has tuned itself to that band. It does not sell itself through volume. It calls through resonance. The heart, always a better ear than the mind, hears and adjusts. You changed stations by choosing coherence over spectacle. You stopped asking your power to prove itself by burning and started asking it to build. You stopped asking your beauty to market you and started asking it to make life easier for everyone in the radius. You stopped asking time to bow and started asking it to breathe. This retuning taught your pulse a new vocabulary. You enter, and the anxious clocks in other chests slow to match you. You speak, and breath remembers it has other settings besides hurry and hold. The heart recognizes tone before content. Yours has become merciful. It carries authority without the tremor of fear. It carries warmth without the need to invoice anyone later. It carries curiosity without the undertow of interrogation. People are not sure why they feel safe near you, only that they do. Safety is not the absence of truth. It is the absence of cruelty. You maintain that absence, and the heart translates it as permission to open. Your frequency clarifies without humiliating. When conflict arrives, you do not buy control at the price of dignity. You narrow the issue until it fits on the table. You subtract theater until listening can afford to stay. You offer the single measured sentence that removes the oxygen from escalation. Fire starved of drama becomes a candle, and candles are useful. You did not win, you made winning unnecessary. The heart hears this difference and comes closer because it will not be conscripted into a war to belong. Consent is built into your signal. You radiate invitation, not insistence. Touch, when it happens, speaks fluent yes or not yet. Proximity, even when it is charged, does not draft a future without two signatures. Timing has become your ally rather than your alibi. You allow desire to keep its poetry by giving it punctuation, a comma where breath must return, a period where memory should rest, an ellipsis where wonder is allowed another night. The heart hears punctuation as care. Care is the only language intimacy trusts. The feminine reads your frequency with a clarity she does not extend to advertisements. A body that has braced for extraction learns it can shift into expression. Shoulders stop rehearsing self-defense. Laughter arrives unarmed. Sorrow keeps its face and does not feel posed. Brilliance is not taxed to spare a fragile ego. And because you are not threatened by fullness, she does not have to fraction herself to be near your comfort. The heart leans not toward ownership, but toward exchange. Light for light, weight for weight, truth for truth. You will notice how rooms tune to you without ceremony. The colleague who fills silence for fear of being ordinary discovers the ordinary is where meaning lives and begins to speak like a person again. The friend who bargains with time, always late, always sorry, begins to arrive as if presence were a gift rather than an apology. The stranger who watches you nod at the elder counting coins stops pretending the line is a race. None of these are miracles, and all of them are. Frequency does what force never can. It harmonizes until resistance becomes off-key enough to correct itself. Your words now ride the signal rather than trying to replace it. You do not stack syllables where one clean phrase will do. You do not outsource depth to volume. You do not rent eloquence to hide the lack of courage. You speak from a place downstream of your breath and upstream of your pride, and the heart hears proportion. Proportion is beautiful. It places the human where the myth would have stood and discovers the human was what we needed all along. Your rest protects the signal. Sleep is no longer a trophy you show on Sundays, it is infrastructure. Water is no longer penance for Saturday night, it is a covenant with Monday afternoon. Movement is no longer a bribe for your reflection, it is how you keep patience in your joints, and not just your ideas. Prayer is no longer a performance of being profound, it is how you keep your appetites from pretending to be gods. These practices are not glamorous, they are tuning. A tuned instrument cannot help producing music when the bow arrives. You are gentle with celebration because you are loyal to tomorrow. You let joy be loud enough to wake the blood and sober enough to remember mercy. You end the party before generosity turns thin and memory needs a makeover. The heart hears that restraint as love. It leaves with energy to bless the next day, and blessing the next day is the most convincing magic there is. There will be those who cannot hear you because they only trust thunder. They will ask you to be angrier, quicker, brighter, bigger, as if righteousness were measured in decibels. Decline the audition. You are not a siren, you are a tuning fork. Strike yourself against truth and hold. Those who are meant to hear will feel their ribs answer. They will not know why they are standing straighter or speaking kinder. They will think they decided, and in a way, they did. Frequency never removes choice, it restores it. When you leave, the room keeps humming. Apologies arrive sooner because shame is not part of your ecosystem. Credit lands where labor lived because your attention made that landing beautiful. Bedtimes happen on time because your timing honored endings. The next morning is less expensive, and nobody can itemize why. The heart can. It heard you, and it kept singing in your key after you were gone. Keep the dial where it is. Chosen one. Keep water before opinion, breath before reply, repair before reputation, rest before rescue. Keep your touch translated into the language of consent and your humor into the craft of relief. Keep letting your sexual energy animate hospitality, not hunger. Your magic is not a trick, it is a tone. Hold it. Rooms will tune, lives will tune, and the month will end the way every good song ends, not with a crash, but with a resonance that keeps moving through the body long after the last note fades. Chosen one, there is a fastening that happens in the air when eyes meet yours. A soft click that doesn't echo yet changes the room's acoustics. It is the recognition a shoreline feels when the tide returns, not spectacle, not conquest, simply the old meeting place reclaiming its use. Faces held together by habit begin to loosen toward truth. The practiced smile that keeps panic employed sighs and retires for the evening. The body across from you cannot find the script it usually hides behind, and in losing it remembers the voice it had before rehearsals began. People will later call this chemistry, or presence, or whatever word is currently fashionable for wonder, but the experience is simpler and older. They see themselves because your seeing doesn't ask them to be anything else. You did not stumble into this power. You trained your gaze to return light, not harvest it. You taught attention to be a blessing rather than a ledger. The old way scanned for advantage, what angle can be taken, what moment can be turned into proof. Your way accompanies. It travels at human speed, pauses where dignity needs a breath, and refuses to make a museum of someone's features. When a person stands before a gaze that does not demand tribute, they become visible to themselves. The jaw unfastens a fraction. Breath, which had been paying a tax to fear, is refunded with interest. In that small financial miracle, the soul comes to the window. Chosen one, your eyes carry the manners of consent. They speak with instead of at, alongside instead of over. They know how to look away so privacy can breathe, and how to return so loneliness doesn't have to finish its sentence alone. Want is not banished from your gaze. It is disciplined. Desire remains alive in the pupil, but it is on a leash held by reverence. The difference is felt first in the nervous system, which does its arithmetic faster than language. This presence carries heat that won't invoice me later. This attention sings without turning me into a stage. Safety is not a slogan you offer, it is a climate your eyes keep. Silence learns a new vocation around you. It stops pretending to be a cliff and becomes a shore where words can land, reconsider, and arrive again without being chased by waves of interruption. You leave a heartbeat between what you hear and what you say next. In that heartbeat, meaning finishes dressing. Confession chooses honesty over performance. Memories, which had been edited for applause, remember their original draft. Sometimes tears arrive without fanfare, and there is no emergency. Salt simply does its old clean work. You are not a miracle worker here. You are a witness with a steady lamp. Lamps do not rescue, they allow rescue to find its way. You have learned how to speak to what is strong in a person without turning that strength into commodity. Your compliments don't pin people to a single bright angle. They praise the discipline beneath the shine. You name how someone kept faith with their morning when no one was watching, or how their boundary was beautiful because it preserved a garden, not because it kept you out. Praise like this doesn't inflate egos. It introduces people to their real size and then lets them choose it freely. The soul recognizes accurate scale and relaxes into it the way water relaxes into a true cup. Your sexual energy anchors this entire exchange. It is no longer a flare seeking witnesses. It is a hearth that keeps the air honest. In your eyes it lives as steadied radiance, not appetite with a costume. Heat without greed is an unadvertised luxury. Bodies know it when they feel it. The feminine, especially, reads your light with fluency. She finds her posture expanding instead of shrinking, her pace setting itself without negotiation, her play returning without needing to be priced. The masculine in others answers by lowering its volume and raising its accuracy. Competence stops dressing up as aggression. Tenderness discovers it can be tensile. In this shared adjustment, souls recognize each other in the oldest language, presence that asks nothing and leaves everything more itself. You keep this magic human by remaining human yourself. You let people see the small repairs you make while the bruise is still light, the way you breathe before replying when a sentence arrives armed, the way you end a good conversation while it is still good and bless it with an ordinary goodbye. Eyes learn from such behavior. They carry tomorrow's manners because you modeled them today. A glance from you becomes a quiet contract. I will not turn your story into equipment. I will not rush your truth to fill my hunger. I will not mistake your beauty for permission. Contracts like that are signed without ink. The signature is the way a person's shoulders forget to brace when your attention finds them. There will be moments when someone tries to hire your gaze for purposes it refuses. The room will offer you the job of judge or savior or spectacle. You decline with a softness that leaves no bruise. You let your eyes remain a sanctuary rather than a sentencing. You carry them to the window when you need a horizon, to water when you need forgiveness, to sleep when you need to protect your edge from turning sharp. Because you keep the lamp trimmed, you can keep the lamp kind. And so when eyes meet you, they don't worship and they don't retreat. They remember. They remember a face they knew before fear started renting space in their expression. They remember a rhythm that didn't bill them for breathing. They remember their soul, and for a while after, they live as if remembering were enough.